Tonight on Reel to Reel, we have the extraordinary story of a woman and her 87 adopted children.
We'll also meet an artist who creates vestments and visit a small but successful Catholic college.
Critic Mike Gallagher reviews Image of a Man and the new Woody Allen movie. And we'll have a conversation with a lay missionary from Nicaragua.
Hello, I'm Monsignor Charles Minor.
And I'm Sean Hughes Camp. Welcome to this edition of Reel to Reel. One of the great things about Reel to Reel is that it gives us the opportunity to bring stories to you about a variety of people and topics. But some of our favorite stories are the ones that are the most thought-provoking.
And our first story tonight is just one of those. It may be difficult for you to watch this, but it's a story which has to be told because it will give us time to pause and think about what is truly important in life.
This is the home of Dorothy Gushaw and her 87 children. Many who live here were rejected by society and dropped by the wayside. So they call their home Our Lady of the Wayside.
It's good, huh? No.
All of the children who live here are severely handicapped, physically or mentally, and for one reason or another cannot live with their own parents. Some are mentally retarded, some epileptic, some blind, deaf, hydrocephalic. Some are afflicted with Down syndrome. And some, like Todd, have cerebral palsy.
He was terribly malnourished. He was 2.5 years old and he only weighed 13 pounds. And his poor mother, I'm sure, was frightened of having a child like this, and also helpless because she didn't know how to take care of him.
So Dorothy and her late husband Bill, who already had 4 healthy children of their own, took 2-year-old Todd into their home as a foster child. That was over 1/4 century ago. Society has never really known what to do with these children. They've always been too different, too much trouble. We placed them in institutions so we didn't have to look at them. Their faces were not like our faces. We locked them up and lumped them all together and called them vegetables. And these vegetables were doomed to waste away from neglect and to die in these gardens of darkness. Because Todd wasn't able to pass a test designed for normal children, he too was headed for one of these institutions.
Todd couldn't speak to answer the questions, nor could he use his hands to put the toys or the blocks in the appropriate places. So based on that evaluation, this psychologist evaluated him as having an IQ of below 50.
The psychologist decided that Todd should be committed to a state institution.
We had seen our other children that we had taken in as foster children taken away from us and put in these hospitals. We had seen what happened to them. One of them was killed, his head crushed by another child who threw him against the stone wall.
Finally, in desperation, Dorothy went to Todd's real father and got permission to adopt his son.
And then I took Todd to Cleveland Clinic and had him evaluated again by a psychologist who immediately said, you know, he's very normal, in fact, above normal.
Since he couldn't talk, Todd learned to type. And although it takes him hours to type a single page, Todd has become an excellent writer, good enough to have his work published in magazines. In the meantime, Dorothy and Bill were taking in more and more handicapped children. Each one was unique, with its own set of problems, but they were determined to give each child, like Todd, every possible chance to develop to its own fullest potential. The little ones grew up into teenagers, and those that lived became adults. In time, the Wayside family grew too large for its first home, so they expanded into another, larger house. Our Lady of the Wayside is not an institution, but a true home in every sense of the word. It has a family atmosphere. It has discipline and training and the security of love, the three most important ingredients in the development of any person.
One of the main criteria for hiring somebody is that they really love the children. And if they don't last long. Music is very relaxing, and we enjoy it. It does a lot for us, and certainly does a lot for a neurologically damaged person.
Just as music somehow arouses God's special children to higher levels of awareness, so does the sound and feel of water relax their bodies and their minds. Christy, who also has cerebral palsy, communicates by means of this alphabet board. Here she spells for us her middle name, M, A, R, I, A. Christy Maria Gasha, Dorothy's second adopted child.
I will praise your name forever. Let all your works give you thanks, O Lord.
One of the greatest mysteries of life is why God allows the incurable suffering of an innocent child.
From the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
We look and we're afraid. We don't understand why God would allow this.
Make friends for yourselves through your use
I believe
of good.
that these kids are chosen really by God and have a very special mission in life, and that one part of that mission is to teach us how to love and how to accept.
In a slight manner is also unjust and greater. When supper was ended, he took the cup. Again, he gave you thanks and praise, gave the cup to his disciples and said, "Take this, all of you, and drink from it. This is the cup of my blood, the blood of the new and everlasting covenant. It will be shed for you and for all, so that sin might be forgiven. Do this in memory of me."
As far as the little children in our home, I want all of them to receive the Eucharist, and I know questions have arisen about that because people say, well, they don't even know what's happening. And my argument is that Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me." And he didn't say give them an IQ test to see if they understood who I was. I want them.
Once there was a man who would embrace the lepers and outcasts of society, because in their hearts he saw his own, and in their faces he saw his own likeness. He loved them and accepted them and embraced them. Here at Our Lady of the Wayside, in his garden of love and caring, he continues through Dorothy Gashaw and her family to radiate the warmth of his eternal love.
Why can't they at least call these children flowers if they have to give them a label? To me, these youngsters are part of the garden of eternity, and I think they're beautiful.
After watching a story like that, what more can you say? Except thank God for people like Dorothy Gashaw.
Stay with us to meet a modern missionary and for Mike Gallagher's review of Broadway Danny Rose. Last week we met Virginia Borton. She is the co-author of Image of a Man, a novel about the Shroud of Turin. Tonight, Mike Gallagher reviews that book and takes a look at the new Woody Allen movie. But first, we'll meet Pat Hynds, who for the last 3 years has worked as a Maryknoll missionary in Nicaragua. She was in town recently, and Monsignor Minaw talked to her about her work and the present situation in Central America.
What are the major areas you think the church has to minister to in Nicaragua?
Well, like all of the Central American countries, they're very poor countries and their needs are almost limitless. But certainly the areas of health, the areas of education, the areas of helping to people to develop leadership so that they can take an important part in their own process, in their own futures. The areas of even agrarian reform, teaching people how to develop the land better and use it more productively.
Pat, is there much persecution in Nicaragua?
All of the people in Nicaragua are afraid of persecution from the United States government. Unfortunately, that's their big fear because that's where the danger is coming from. We're financing the counter-revolution, admittedly, in Congress. It's been voted on to supply more funds to the groups that are coming in and killing a lot of Nicaraguan civilians. So that's the big fear of the Nicaraguan people. However, I think they believe that, again, the American people are their hope. They believe very strongly that we have a lot of influence on our government and that if American people come down and see what's going on, they'll come back and tell their people and the policies may change.
Well then, what would you say the church should be doing in a place like Nicaragua?
One of the key issues or one of the key needs of missionaries is to share our experience that we've received in Central America with other Americans back here in the United States, to try to give to the people back here what we see there is going on, to encourage people to learn about Central America. It's a very important area and one in which we're becoming more and more involved militarily. So people should understand what's going on there and what the role of the United States is in the area. So I think that's an important role for all of us Americans down there, to tell that story back home.
If you had the one opportunity to enlighten us, what would you say we should do most about making ourselves aware of Nicaragua?
Well, I think the main message that I would give to the people here in the United States is to be critical of what you hear, to be critical of what you read in the newspapers, to be critical of what you read on television, not to discount it, but at least look for other opinions and talk to people who have been down there, talk to people who've lived down there and worked down there, and try to find out more about the situation than just what is presented on the surface. Certainly get beyond the presentation by the politicians in Washington that this is somehow a threat to our very security and a threat to our way of life.
What do you see then as the future of the church's mission in Nicaragua?
Well, the church is very important to the people in Nicaragua. And so I see a continual role in Nicaragua for people with the church to help the people, to encourage them to maintain their Christian voice within the process that's going on, to make their Christian values heard and felt, to continue to reflect, as they do in the Christian-based communities, on the scriptures and how that affects their daily life, how it applies to their daily life. So I certainly see a tremendous role, as well as, again, in the areas of social programs, in the areas of continuing to help build health care and build literacy and build land reform. I see a tremendous role for the church in Nicaragua for many years to come.
Hello, I'm Mike Gallagher. Today I'm going to talk about the latest Woody Allen movie and about a novel. The novel is called Image of a Man. It centers on the Shroud of Turin, the linen cloth and printed, many believe, with the image of the crucified Christ. Its authors are George and Virginia Borton, writing under the pen name of V.G. Borton. The Bortons have concocted an historical pageant interwoven with a limp romantic thriller about a present-day attempt to steal the shroud and hold it for ransom. The villains are foiled thanks to the wit and pluck of a handsome Italian count, who's a Grand Prix champion turned archaeologist, and a lovely American correspondent for a magazine much like Time or Newsweek. It's all very chic. The historical portion features a cast of mostly walk-ons, ranging from real people, such as the Emperor Constantine, to humbler folks who are products of the Bortons' not especially fertile imaginations. The lovely American, by the way, is named Molly Madrigal. Now, if there's an actual Molly Madrigal out there, please don't take this personal. But personally, I find it hard to relate to a character named Molly Madrigal. Years ago, I had the same problem with Napoleon's solo on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Now, maybe I'm not musically inclined, but there's much else in the book that I had at least as much trouble relating to, and I think you might too. We have, for example, the standard sex and violence in exotic settings, you know, the kind of thing pioneered by Cecil B. DeMille. Nor had the Borton spared us a cliché dear to the heart of ultra-male chauvinists, a woman falling in love with the man who rapes her. Finally, despite the subject matter, the Image of a Man betrays not the least trace of any genuine religious feeling. There are several books available on the fascinating mystery of the Shroud. Pick one that tells the story straight and doesn't trivialize it with embellishments inspired by second-rate biblical movies and third-rate thrillers. Now, a word on Woody Allen's latest movie, Broadway, Danny Rose. It's a very modest effort in every way, lasting a bare 80 minutes. Allen plays a theatrical agent who works his heart out for some hapless performers that nobody else could possibly believe in. Morose balloon folder, stuttering ventriloquist, and the like. If he weren't Jewish, Danny would be a candidate for canonization, and the devil's advocate wouldn't be able to make any case at all. But as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. And an overweight Italian singer, a has-been who barely escapes being the never was, throws over Danny as soon as he gets his big break. His brassy mistress, played by Mia Farrow, prompts him to do this.
I don't know. Yeah, I like to flirt, you know. Sometimes people take it too seriously. Johnny's all right. He was really nice to me when my marriage fell apart.
Yes, and what did your husband do?
A little bookmaking, some loan sharking, extortion, like that.
So you're a professional. What'd you do? You divorced him, or you got a separation, or what?
Some guy shot him in the eyes.
Really? He's blind?
Dead.
He's dead, of course, because the bullets go right through.
Broadway Danny Rose is much too sentimental and self-congratulatory to be as funny as Allen wants it to be. It's only mildly amusing. Though it's innocuous for the most part, it does contain some crude ethnic stereotyping that Italians are, with good cause, likely to find quite offensive. Next time, I'm going to talk about the popular TV series Aftermath. I'm Mike Gallagher, and that's this week's Arts Review.
It's a grayish, beautiful color combination, and it has a beautiful flow. The priest who wears this will feel very comfortable.
You start to develop their minds. You start to get them thinking, reflecting. You start to get them thinking seriously about important questions. The books we read will do that.
Up next, we'll meet an artist who works in an unusual medium. Ben Stadelmaier is a vestment maker who creates some of the most beautiful liturgical outfits worn by bishops all over the world. After that, we'll travel to California, to St. Thomas Aquinas College. It's a small institution with only 115 students enrolled, but it seeks excellence, and that's why it was founded.
Have you ever wondered just where clergy shop for their clothing? After all, there's certainly no religious wear department at Bloomingdale's. Try to imagine, if you will, a bishop or a cardinal browsing through the latest line of vestments, wondering which stole matches which mitre. Clothier Ben Stadelmaier has been designing vestments for more than 44 years.
In my opinion, it's really important, it's very important that the pastor in his church or the bishop in his appearance to the people are well dressed and are tastefully dressed. It is my task to develop vestments for nowadays church. The vestments have changed dramatically due of the influence of Vaticanum II. And at that time, I started studying the function of the vestment in nowadays liturgy, in changing liturgy, and thought it was good to change the flow and the appearance of the vestment. And that had a big influence on the way a vestment looks like today. I call this a white. It is an earth tone, a cream color. White is the color for Christmas. It's the color for the big festivities of the year. Celebration, white. This is a vestment for funerals. It's a grayish, beautiful color combination, and it has a beautiful flow. The priest who wears this will feel very comfortable.
You might say that Ben is the Pierre Cardin of religious attire. Many of the most influential churchmen of the world wear his original designs, each hand-sewn and tailored to order.
If I see my vestments functioning in a small ceremony or in a big ceremony in a cathedral, and I see that they really serve the liturgy, then I'm extremely happy.
Enhanced by the serene beauty of a California wilderness setting, the students of St. Thomas Aquinas College in Santa Paula ponder the nature of peace. They discuss the fundamental principles of the metaphysics of morals, and they study the greatest words men have ever written. In an effort to establish a college which would provide a true Catholic liberal arts education, the founders of St. Thomas based their curriculum on the study of the great books. College President Ronald MacArthur is convinced that the original works of Plato, Aristotle, and Galileo are more useful than modern textbooks.
Well, textbooks are written for the most part by professors who have ordinary minds and who write books in order that students can pass courses and get grades. The great books, on the other hand, were written by authors who thought that what they were writing was true. They're written in such a way that the difficulties remain. Therefore, they're very difficult to read, and they're very difficult to understand. If you read books like that with students, you start to develop their minds. You start to get them thinking, reflecting. You start to get them thinking seriously about important questions. The books we read will do that.
Augustine says that peace is the tranquility of order, right? Yeah. So he takes it to be something other than order, right? And Dr. McLean's question is, what's that other, I suppose?
I guess that's right. Students, after the classroom, go to the lunch and go at supper and whatnot and speak about those things that they learned in class. And so in that way, it is a sign to me that they take things rather differently than most students might. That is, they're not simply going through and getting grades and whatnot, but they're really interested in what they're doing.
I think we're the only school in the country which is seriously intellectual in every part of our program, and also seriously Catholic in our habituation to education.
The faculty and the administration is really concerned about our spiritual lives, and they have priests here, and the sacraments are readily available, and they just want us to progress not only in our liberal education, but also becoming good Christians and trying to become intellectually perfected and also spiritually perfected.
St. Thomas Aquinas provides no career training for its students. Rather, it concentrates on the development of reason and intellect. Graduates of the college have gone on to study many subjects, including law, medicine, business, and computer science at prestigious schools around the world.
I came here thinking that this was the best education in the country, and I've changed my mind. I think this is the only education in the country, really.
Well, we promised you a variety of stories tonight, ranging from vestments to college excellence.
To Nicaragua, and to the children who are handicapped. And I think the appreciation of all the stories can be had if we understand the children first. That to help them, we must not make them be what we are, but enter into their lives first.
Next week, Reel to Reel examines the issue of alcoholism with local experts in our Crosstalk segment.
And with a visit to a treatment center founded by a priest.
And on a lighter note, we'll meet the beekeeper priest.
We've enjoyed being with you. Good night, and God bless you.
Thanks for being with us. See you next week. Good night.
Well, maybe we should ask that question in Washington. At least that's the fear that many of us down there have, is that the future of Nicaragua isn't really going to be determined in Nicaragua. It's going to be determined here in Washington, either by the CIA or by the administration. So I would say it's very important for Nicaragua, if there is going to be a future that the Nicaraguan people can choose for themselves, which we certainly say we support, the whole idea of self-determination, that people here make their feelings known about our involvement in Central America.